I do want to take a moment to recognize the land and the treaties that allow us to live and to experience this evening's event together. So I remind everyone and myself that treaties were based on First Nations principles of Miyo Wisitoen, Wetaskoen, and Pimasitoen. Specifically, that's getting along with others, living together on the land, and making a living. And when I think about spending time together tonight, living together on the land, sharing with our Indigenous brothers and sisters, as well as all those that have joined on Treaty 6 territory, we hold deep relationship and responsibility to each other, but most importantly, the land that gives us life. So as I look out my window at the beautiful sun shining in, I recognize the gifts that have been bestowed upon myself and my family, the families at our school, and the opportunities that we have in educating youth in Saskatoon with Saskatoon Public Schools. So all that to be said, I'd like to simply finish with the note that treaties were intended to provide both sides, being newcomers and Indigenous people, with the opportunity to achieve survival and socioeconomic stability, anchored on the very foundational principles of mutual benefit. So tonight, thanks to our presenters, we will experience a greater extent to this. And I turn it over to Gretchen.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, everyone. My name is Gretchen Peterson, and I am our SCC chairperson from École Victoria. And thank you so much for those of you from Victoria joining us, and from some other community schools here in Saskatoon. You're very welcome part of this evening. I have the job of, I will be moderating a little bit later on, but right now, just a little bit of housekeeping things. So as Paul mentioned, we're going to be recording. So if you don't want your video as part of the recording, you can shut your video off. Please make sure you're muted during the presentation. We'll have time, there'll be about a 30-minute presentation by our three presenters. If you think of a question, you can pop it in the chat, of course, during the presentations, and we'll be monitoring that. So we'll take those at the end of the presentation time. And you'll also have the opportunity to ask your question live if you'd rather do that after the presentation. And this presentation has mainly been set up geared for parents, but there's nothing that children can't hear as well. So just so you know what kind of the focus of the presentation is and who it's for. I think those are all the housekeeping things. So I'll turn it back to you, Gwen, for one more quick introduction.
Thanks, Gretchen. I would like to introduce, before we hear about our presenters, I'd like to introduce Kathleen Brannan, who is joining us tonight. Kathleen is our trustee at École Victoria, and we're so glad to have you here, Kathleen.
Thank you so much for inviting me, and I just wanted to, I'm happy that you introduced me so I could just say to people, definitely call or write to me if you have any questions about anything, good or bad or anything. I'm just here. So thanks and have a great presentation, and happy to be here. Bye.
All right, thanks, Kathleen, for joining us. And I'm going to hand it to Andrea, who is the treasurer for our SCC, and she's going to introduce our presenters for this evening.
Awesome. Thank you, Gretchen. So as you've heard, we do have three wonderful presenters here tonight for you. Two of them being parents of children that do attend École Victoria. So I'll just give a quick little intro for each here. With us tonight, we do have Dr. Ayisha Kurji, who is a general pediatrician in Saskatoon for both inpatient and outpatient pediatrics at the Jim Pattison Children's Hospital. She is also one of the only pediatricians in Saskatchewan who specializes in treating children and teens with eating disorders, and has spoken locally, provincially, and nationally about aspects of eating disorder care with the goal to increase awareness. Our second presenter that we'll have here tonight as well is Dr. Tamara Hinz. She is a child adolescent psychiatrist and assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry. at the U of S. She also works at the Youth Mental Health Unit in Saskatoon and the Dubé Center, being a very active voice in social media to create awareness for the growing need of mental health services for youth. So we also thank Dr. Hinz for being here with us. And last but not least, we do have Dayna Berry, who's a certified counselor for eating disorder intuitive therapy. So she supports individuals with disordered eating patterns, clinically diagnosed eating disorders, binge eating, and avoidant or restrictive food intake disorder. She's a very active community member in Saskatoon and helps cultivate body acceptance, positivity, and health and wellness practices for people of all ages. So lots of great things to talk about tonight. So I will pass it over to Dr. Ayisha Kurji here to kick things off and go from there. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for coming and thanks for having us tonight. We're really excited to share this presentation with you. I'm just going to get our presentation up and running here, which hopefully should be pretty easy because we tried it yesterday to make sure.
Yeah, we can see it, Ayisha. You're muted though.
Okay, perfect. There we go. Can you see it? All good? Okay, perfect. So we'll kind of get right on into it. These are some of the things that we're hoping to kind of cover today. Thanks to everyone who submitted questions ahead of time too. We've tried to incorporate the answers into the presentation part, but if there's anything that we miss, please make sure you ask questions at the end as well. So hopefully for today, we're going to talk a little bit about healthy relationships with food and body, learn some red flags to recognize eating disorders and disordered eating behavior, and talk a little bit about what to do when we do find them and how to prevent them. So just before we talk a little bit about that, some information or some stats for you guys. So 42% of girls aged 6 to 10 wish that they were thinner. Half of girls 9 to 10 say they feel better about themselves when they're dieting, and 4 out of 5 kids are afraid of being fat. So this is all Canadian data. This is from it's a little bit older. It's from a study that actually looked at 5,000 kids. And what they found is exactly what you kind of see there. And they also kind of looked at, there's another one called Project Eat, where they actually looked at teenagers. And in 14 to 15-year-old girls, if you engage in strict dieting practices, you're 18 times more likely to develop an eating disorder in the next year. Or overall, sorry, I should say 18 times more likely to develop an eating disorder in your life and 20% chance of developing one in the next year. So something that's really, really scary for us when we think about that, when we think about the potential devastating outcomes of eating disorders. If you think about, older kids, if you think about college age, 91% of women in college campuses have tried to control their weight through dieting, 22% diet all the time. About 25% will binge and purge as a method of controlling their weight. 95% of those who diet will actually regain that weight in the next 1 to 5 years. When we think about body image and how it affects what's going on in school and affects your health, the worse your body image is, the lower your grades are, regardless of what your weight is. And 1 in 5 teenagers are not showing up to class because they don't feel good about their looks. That one was really surprising and scary to all of us, and was very devastating. Actually, think about the impact that's going to have on your whole life. 3 out of 5 girls choose not to do things they enjoy because they think they don't look good enough to do that. And when you have a poor body image, it leads to less physical activity, more dieting, an increased risk of eating disorders, lower self-esteem, and more depression, more shame.
Yeah, so when we're looking at body image, we a lot of times look at it on a continuum. So really it's how we think or feel about our bodies can really go back and forth throughout our life. Lots of times by the time we're even preschool age, we've begun already to learn how society views physical characteristics. And so we learn about what's considered attractive by a larger society and told what we should live up to when we're very young. Different things that can influence this are cultural influences, so things like media, advertising, and cultural messages about what's desirable, even messages from family, friends, which can really play a role. Lived experience can also play a role. So again, can include peer and family interactions. A lot of the time, it's things like getting comments about their body, bullying, teasing, or even family members making comments, putting their kids on diets. Can really affect that body image and where they are in that continuum throughout their whole life. Most people as adults always remember as kids any comments that were made about their bodies. Physical characteristics can really play a role as well, especially during puberty. Bodies change dramatically, which can bring kind of a new preoccupation with physical appearance. Because the body is changing shape and size, lots of the times there is more of a focus on having the right body type. Different personalities can also play a role. So some people are a little more sensitive to comments of others or to the societal standards regarding your body. So there's lots of layers that can really contribute to where we are in this body image continuum. And what I want you to think about is, where are you on this continuum? And really, what made you think a certain way about your body? Like what different aspects, was it cultural, was it media that really brought you to feel a certain way about your body? No one is born hating their body. So a lot of the times I ask people, where did you learn that your body's not good enough?
So Dayna covered quite a few of these points on the continuum, but when we look at who's at risk, obviously from Ayisha's first slide, all kids are at risk, but when we look at which children might be particularly at risk, here is sort of an incomplete list. So again, in that kind of puberty phase, that late childhood or early adolescent time where that's a normal physiologic time for bodies to change. If self-esteem is already quite low or a child is depressed, they are more at risk. Those who have been teased or who have bodies that don't sort of fit a media norm, there are certain personality traits that can make kids more vulnerable. Those with a high need for control, kids who are kind of perfectionistic, those who tend to think very concretely, sort of all or nothing, black or white type thinkers. We'll talk more about this later on in the presentation, but those who are surrounded by others who talk a lot or worry a lot about their body image. And one thing that we see a lot in clinic are children who are participating in sports or other types of activities where there's a heavy focus on bodies. And I think we often think those activities as, ballet, dance, gymnastics, but there's all sorts of activities actually with a pretty heavy body focus. Things like wrestling or boxing, mixed martial arts, even football or rugby. So I think it's important to think broadly about how those activities or which activities might cause kids to think more about their body. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, we all love this one. We thought it's a great reflection of sort of where we are in the world, right? And what's going on and what's kind of led us to where we are and why we're conditioned to kind of think the way we do. Which kind of brings us a little bit to the F word, which is fat in this context, right? We're conditioned in our society to think that fat is bad and that being fat is bad. And it's definitely true that, you know, being obese can have health risks, but it doesn't mean that everyone who's overweight or obese will have those health complications. So it's not the being overweight or having fat that is the issue. It's actually what is coming from it and what are the health conditions that are affecting your body. So instead of thinking about our body in terms of the numbers on the scale or the way that we look, one way to think about it is, what does our body do or not do? So you can love or accept your body and still want to change it because you're having health complications or because your body's not doing what you want it to do. But that doesn't change who you are as a person. And it doesn't make you more than or less than. And it shouldn't be the be all or end all of what we think, right? Fat doesn't mean that you're unhealthy. And skinny doesn't mean that you are healthy. Both extremes can have health complications, and people who are quote unquote normal weight can also have health complications. So it's really thinking about, is there a specific thing I want to change about my body because of the way it works, right? And changing the language around fat. You aren't fat, you have fat. So we've put on the presentation some things to think about if your kids are starting to talk about fat or saying, you know, things like, I'm fat, maybe saying, oh, you're noticing fat. You know, fat's an important part of your body. It helps you stay warm. It cushions you from falls. Fat keeps your body working the way it's supposed to, right? Or if someone says to you, you're fat, oh, you're noticing my body, right? I do have fat on my body. There's nothing wrong with that. Does it feel good when I have it? Give you a nice soft hug and things like that. I'll give you a minute to maybe read through some of that. But the key here is we kind of need to rethink the way we think about fat. And that isn't actually bad in and of itself.
I'll try and go through these next couple slides quickly because I know we started a little bit late. But one thing we really wanted you folks as and all of us as parents is to think about how the things that we talk might be contributing or influencing the way our kids think about their own bodies and body images. And we know that all kids are little sponges. They're listening all the time. And so you know, just consider, do I talk about thinness or body size in positive and negative ways? Am I complimenting people because they've lost weight? How do we talk about our own bodies, right? That's really important. You know, when we talk about needing different clothing sizes or parts of our bodies that we might not like, I think it's just important to be aware of who's listening to that. So these are some other signs or red flags that I think we would encourage all of us to sort of think about, you know, categorizing foods into good or bad, you know, again, equating thinness with health, always thinking that more exercise is better, assuming that somebody large needs to lose weight or even wants to lose weight. And also the way we talk about our children's bodies too, right? Especially during that kind of critical pubertal time, making sure that the comments we're making are positive or at least neutral.
And that leads us into body neutrality. So there's a lot in the media, that sort of thing, and movements on body positivity, which is really great. The thing is that this can be an alternative to body positivity because all of us have, again, on that continuum, we're constantly shifting. Everyone's not going to love their body all the time, every day. So the neutrality is more so between hate and love of your body. So it's more of accepting your body for what it is rather than what it isn't. So it can really erase the shame behind, I know I should love my body, but I still don't. So it's more of a neutral feeling about your body, accepting your body as it is without attaching an emotional response, being indifferent towards it, and taking care of your body so that it can exist. Body neutrality is a little more realistic and a little more achievable, and can really turn down the volume on the externalized pressures we have in the community. So when we're looking at it, it's some days, hey, I like this part of my body. Other days, you look in the mirror and you're like, wow, bad body image day. And that's going to happen. We're really going to shift, but really seeing our bodies for what they do for us more than externally what they look like. And so knowing that it shifts and being neutral about it.
So we've talked about some of this already, but you know, some of the things that we can do to create that body positive environment, looking really critically at what is surrounding our kids and what the messaging is. So are there fashion magazines or diet magazines around? Being really careful of what kind of exposure they get in the media, because we know that there's definitely certain body types that are portrayed as good bodies in the media and some that are not. You know, thinking about if you do see those messages challenging them, thinking about whether or not you need a scale in your house, or is there is that maybe creating an atmosphere where we should be weighing ourselves and things like that. And also thinking about diet talk and self-talk and trying to discourage that. Remembering that, you know, all food fits, all food is part of a healthy a relationship with food. There's no good foods and bad foods, like we sort of talked about. Looking at what you think yourself and what you're talking about yourself. We've talked about that already. And maybe really challenging that myth that health is dependent on your body weight or size, because it very much isn't, right? And listening for some of those red flags and being ready to talk about them when they come out. So we thought we'd focus a little bit on food.
Yes. Okay. So talking about nutrition, in society, we are told here's good foods, here's bad foods. You have to choose these foods. There's become kind of this moral value on it, saying if you're eating bad foods, quote unquote, unhealthy foods, that you're not living healthy, you're not doing good, and really nourishing your body. So we really need to start at a young age, kind of preventing guilt and shame around eating. And this kind of goes with when we have guilt and shame, a lot of people will hide food, they'll eat in secret, or even sneak down to the kitchen at night and eat alone, just so that they don't feel that guilt and shame or judged by other people with what they are eating. Same with adults. A lot of the times what food we bring to work is a lot different than what we're eating alone in the evenings. So reminding them that all foods can really fit, and I will talk about a little bit about the food neutrality as well. Reminding your kids to follow their hunger cues most of the time. So we can also eat because we enjoy things. Food is for nutrition, but it is a pleasure thing. And it's also a cultural thing, social thing. Every time we all get together, there's food around. So really seeing food for what it is. It's more than just the nutrition. We are all, our bodies know what they need. So our bodies know, like a baby will cry when it's hungry and stop when it's full. Our bodies innately know what it needs. Just over time, we really lose that hunger and fullness, those cues, and it can really change our patterns of eating. So reminding your kids, hey, if you're full, it's okay if you don't finish your plate, but you can have a little more later because maybe you're going to be hungry a little later. So really getting them to continue to notice those hunger cues. Using food as reward can be risky. So if you do this, you can have a cookie, or if you get hurt, no, stop crying, you can have some candy. What this does, especially in kids, is it makes them think that food is a reward. So it can really lead to a lot of emotional eating when they're stressed, when they're sad. Okay, this food is going to make me feel better. And so again, there shouldn't be necessarily guilty pleasures. It's okay to like quote unquote bad food, what we think is junk food. It's okay to have that food, and it's okay to enjoy it. If we're thinking that if there's a lot of shame, if there's a lot of guilt, this can really lead to a lot of emotional eating, a lot of binge eating, which can lead to binge purging. It can lead to like restriction because we feel so bad about it. So it really can affect our relationship with food, where there is that unhealthy behaviors can really start as well. So allowing your kids to have the foods they want. There's foods that give us more nutrients, and foods that don't give us as much nutrients, but really just seeing food for what it is and not just good and bad. And I will talk about that more in the next slide. So food neutrality. So again, food does not have its own set of morals. Food is just food. It brings people together, it's cultural, and it can instill a lot of memories with us. So food itself does not make someone morally good or bad for eating it. And it doesn't define us. Food is more than just fuel because it can serve us in many different ways. Well, one important purpose of food is to provide nourishment for growth, development, and aging. Food also provides comfort, pleasure, connection, tradition. It can meet our needs for comfort or pleasure. So there's a lot of things that are important along with our needs for nourishment. Behaviors, habits, and thought patterns can be healthy or unhealthy. Since health is influenced by many factors, whether it's genetics, social supports, access to healthcare, education level, discrimination, a single food will play a very small role in that. So I have a little example where it's vegetables are often considered a healthy food. However, if vegetables are the only food someone eats, their physical, mental, emotional, or social wellness can be very negatively impacted. Chocolate bars are often labeled as unhealthy, but if a chocolate bar was the only food available to eat for 6 hours, the chocolate bar may contribute to a person feeling less anxious, moody, lethargic, because they're giving their body some energy. So without context, it's difficult to say what's healthy and what's not. Referring to food by what it's called, rather than using judgment labels. So, for example, moving away from using terms like healthy, unhealthy, clean food, junk food, good, bad. Instead, name the food what it is. So this is raspberries, this is chocolate, this is candy, this is cereal. You might even try to describe food objectively. So this food is nourishing, this food is comforting, this food is a fun food, or this food is convenient. So neutralizing the language that we use around food can really remove that moral, I guess, that moralization we put on it. It can remove that judgment, that shame around eating those certain foods.
I don't know why that one's showing up blank. That one was supposed to be
a picture. Yeah. If you click it again, would it come up?
I'm trying. It's not working.
Oh, okay.
It was a picture of like the old kind of thinking of you are what you eat, where, you know, if you're a nice strong body and you're made of all vegetables, and if you're eating kind of fast food, that's a bad body or a bad makes you, it's kind of that judgment that Dayna was just talking about, and how that's really not a great way to talk about food. Okay. So maybe shift gears a little bit and talk a little bit about eating disorders, which is something that we all work really closely with a lot of kids who struggle. And we just wanted to highlight this because we know that it's something that is actually a lot more common than we think. So the stat there, eating disorders are the third most common chronic condition in adolescents. Really scary and a lot more common than you think. And we know that they're also often underdiagnosed or not diagnosed at all. And this is a bit of an older stat in the graph on this side that looks at how the hospitalizations for eating disorders and which population is actually having the biggest increase. And it's the younger kids, it's kids under the age of 12. And in the pandemic, we've definitely seen an explosion of eating disorders. This is not just in Saskatoon, it's not just in Saskatchewan or even in Canada, it's internationally. Places are seeing hospitalizations double or triple, and referrals to eating disorder clinics doubling and tripling. So it's a big deal and something that can be devastating to health. So we thought we would talk a little bit about some red flags for what to watch for. We also, there we go. Yeah.
So these are some things that you might be on the lookout for in your own family. If your child starts really talking about weight a lot, has an excessive focus on parts of their body or the shape of their body, changes in eating behaviors, this one can look like a lot of different things. So kids who start eating only on their own, secluding themselves or taking their food up to their bedroom, if that's sort of not the norm in your family. Children who develop disordered eating sometimes start to eat in really peculiar ways. They might separate out all their foods or cut things into really tiny pieces, take an excessively long time to eat. Anything that is sort of different from how your child has typically eaten can sometimes be something that needs to be looked further into. Taking lots and lots of trips to the bathroom. So anything that might indicate that a child is purging or throwing up after they eat. So, quickly leaving the table after each meal, for example, might be something that you'd keep an eye on. Children with who are at risk of developing eating disorders often will complain of lots of stomach or gastrointestinal concerns. They complain of abdominal pain, especially when eating. They may just deny that they're hungry, even though you know that they haven't eaten for several hours. Kids who are exercising excessively, hours a day. Sometimes we see kids who are getting up in the middle of the night and secretly exercising at that time. And yeah, obviously, if you see kids who are vomiting or using laxatives or other things that they might think would help them lose weight. Unfortunately, we used to just talk about things like diet teas, which are really usually just a diuretic or a laxative. But unfortunately, there's been this explosion in sort of diet or detox related products that are out on the market. So really, there's no reason for anybody to go on a cleanse or need a detox kit. Anything that is sort of marketed as a diet or detox product is something that you might want to watch out for.
Some of the other physical things that you might notice if your child is struggling with not getting enough nutrition, and they might start to feel really cold all the time, needing to wear extra layers of clothes compared to before, compared to others in your family, really low energy levels. They might be fainting, starting to feel dizzy when they stand up. They might become more anxious or more crabby and irritable, more sad or even more flat, where their emotions don't have those normal ranges of ups and downs. School might become really difficult, so they're maybe declining in school performance, having trouble concentrating. So maybe even things like homework that they usually do really quickly, now it's taking them hours and hours, or they didn't used to have homework and now they're coming home needing to do work because they couldn't get it done at school. And in people who menstruate, they might start to get irregular periods or skip having periods altogether because their body doesn't have enough nutrition to keep going.
So this presentation maybe spurred some interest or some concern in your family. We wanted to just point out a few resources in terms of where you might go to next. For most families, a school counselor or a family doctor is an excellent place to start to ask some of these questions. In Saskatoon, there is an eating disorders team through Youth Mental Health Services, which is a publicly funded service available to all of us. Bridgepoint is in a tiny community called Milden, Saskatchewan, but serves the entire province for residential eating disorder treatment. Staying at Bridgepoint is more geared to older adolescents and adults, but one nice thing that the pandemic brought about is they actually started introducing a lot more virtual and online resources and supports. So they have, virtual book clubs on body image and things like that. So they have a really great website. If you just Google Bridgepoint, that would point you to a lot of resources. And then, obviously, once you've spoken to your family doctor or someone else, you may end up discussing a referral to child psychiatry or to someone like Ayisha or Dayna. That's the end of our formal presentation. We have one other slide that we were going to leave up that people can just read at their own leisure. I know it's a lot of words on a slide. It sort of breaks the rule of PowerPoint presentations, but we truly thought the entire quote was incredible and we didn't want to cut any of it out. So we won't read it out, but it's just, we'll leave it up there so that you can read it at your own pace. And sorry we got a little bit of a late start, but we still have 11 minutes for questions. So Gretchen, is there anything that has come up in the chat so far?
No, the chat's been, oh, someone just wrote something. I'll just read it out. So I'm not sure how to pronounce the person's name. Sayo. Sorry if I got it wrong. I have one question about vegetable intake for my little one. My daughter is 5 and she grows well. She used to eat lots of vegetables when she was 2 and stopped to eat vegetables and only fruits after 3. Right now she can take cucumbers with honey. Do you have any concerns about her nutritional deficiency, or do you have any ways or suggestions to promote her to eat more vegetables? I'm sorry.
Yes. So this is a hard one. Kids always go through phases of really liking a certain food, not liking a certain food. It's really normal to see that shift. A lot of kids don't like vegetables. I would say the best thing to do would either get your kid to cook with you. If you have a garden, get them to garden with you. See how getting them involved in that process of making food can really get them more excited about food. The other way to talk about vegetables, kind of sneaking them in, would be, hey, if you don't like broccoli, but you want to melt some cheese on it to make it taste better, or, put Cheese Whiz on it, at least you're getting those nutrients that way. So kind of making it fun as much as you can. If they like to dip something in peanut butter, like celery sticks or whatever it may be, or taking them to the grocery store and being like, hey, pick out one vegetable you might really want to try, or that you might like. So really getting your kids involved with getting excited about food instead of just putting on a plate in front of them, or even giving them the option. So, hey, if you like carrots, do you like the baby carrots? Do you like garden carrots? Do you want it cooked? Do you want it not cooked? Letting them kind of have some control over that can be helpful as well.
Awesome. So Kendra has a question. My 11-year-old has started telling us she wants to be a vegetarian for ethical purposes. She is a great eater, has always had access to all types of food, and on her own will choose healthy food most times. What is the best way to approach this request?
Yeah, that's a common thing. And I think especially at that age, developmentally, kids are very tuned into issues of justice and fairness. And so these kinds of ideas about my food and what did it take for my food to get here is pretty developmentally normal. I would just make sure that your child is aware of what a healthy vegetarian diet looks like. Some kids think that they can just sort of take the regular family meal and slide off the meatloaf, and that's sort of their diet. So I would use it as a really good learning opportunity to research alternate protein sources together and making sure that diets are still really balanced, and just to be on the lookout to make sure that this isn't sort of the start of a slippery slope of more food exclusions or some of that moralizing we talked about foods and things like clean foods or good foods. That would be my advice. Ayisha and Dayna.
I completely agree. I see a lot of kind of disordered eating disorders start with, I want to be vegetarian or I want to do this. So it's really about watching, are they continuing to cut out more and more foods? Also for sure, protein sources and, zinc, B12, a lot of those things, if we're cutting out meat, we can lose those. And for development reasons, we do want our kids to have those. So it's finding other foods that can still provide those nutrients. And there's healthy ways to do it, like Tamara said. So it's really just realizing, hey, how can we get protein in a different way? But yeah, you said it.
Yeah, I have nothing else to add to that. That's exactly what I would say too. It's in and of itself can be totally fine, just making sure it's not a slippery slope and watching.
Okay, Chris, both of the people who had their questions say thank you. Christine asks, can you recommend any resources or books on changing unhealthy thought patterns around eating?
I did send, I think to you, Gwen, I have a list. I think I sent it to you, Gwen, but it has different social media accounts. It has Instagram, different podcasts. And then at the end of it, it does have different books too, for more of a positive body image. So that sheet will have a lot of recommendations as well. But if there's anything off the top of your head, Tamara, Ayisha.
One of the Instagram accounts I like is the plate by plate approach. It's a really good one that kind of just looks at, it actually shows pictures of different foods and different snacks and like ways that you can get all of the food groups in. So that's a nice one. Of course, I'm blanking on all of the ones right now, but I know Dayna did put together a list that we can send out.
Yeah. And if there are any teachers on here, I'm not sure if there are, but there is also an Instagram account that's really awesome. And it's called Dieticians for, like the number 4 teachers. And so it's a group of dietitians that kind of send out different resources and ways to kind of approach any of your students as well.
This is more about kind of picky eating, but there's a Instagram account that I really like called Kids Eat in Color. And it's kids.eat.in.color spelled the American way. And a dietitian and a mom runs that account, and it's I really like her approach because she often breaks each post down into different developmental stages. So this is how you might talk about vitamins for preschoolers. This is how you might talk about them for, you know, a more elementary school age and then teenagers, and also has some really nice tips on picky eating and helpful tips around sort of normal portion sizes, because that's something else that as parents we freak out about. You know, we're talking here about kids not eating enough, but sometimes, or kids choosing to not eat enough, but sometimes we think that they should be eating way more because they're picky. So that's another one that I like. But yeah, I do think that Gwen will be forwarding that on. And I think just in general, I know the question was about sort of books and resources, but I think the message, if we haven't repeated it enough here already, is really just all of this stuff starts at home, and to just be really aware about the conversations and the kinds of language and terms that you're using to describe food at home, because that really does have a big impact on kids' perceptions of food.
It's almost just like be a good role model.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, this
the
quote
benefit
came
is
from
it's
Ellen.
healthy for you too.
Right? And this quote came from Ellen Zader, who has a great book and a great website on ways to handle eating with your kids in a really positive way. So she's another good resource.
So I'll just add then too that we do have that selection of resources that Dayna and Tamara and Ayisha put together. And so I will, once the link, the recording is ready to go, I will share both the link to the recording in case there are parts of it that you wanted to watch again, as well as the resources that they have prepared for us to share with you. So that will come out to everybody who's in this meeting and who is on the list tonight. So, and thank you so much to the three of you for putting those together for us too, for follow-up.
Yeah, and if there is anything, because we went through that stuff really fast, if there's anything people want more information on, just let us know, and we can either direct you in the right place or send stuff to you as well.
Awesome.
Did we actually end on time?
Oh my gosh. I don't see any other questions coming in on the chat, just lots of thank yous. So I guess if there are no further questions, we can end on time. Isn't that? Oh, now we're getting lots of thank yous. So thank you from us on the École Victoria SCC for taking time out of your schedule to be with us and for putting together a presentation, being here to do the work of talking with us and answering questions that came in, for sharing your expertise and for also all the things that you do in our community to help people, and not just in Saskatoon, but I know wider, especially during this pandemic time. I know, you know, as parents, we are concerned for our children's well-being, their mental health, their physical health. So thank you for giving us some things to think about, some skills, some things to watch for as we continue to try to be good parents to our little ones. So thank you again, Dayna, Tamara, and Ayisha, for taking the time to be with us. And thank you to all of you who were here and participated in watching the presentation. And sounds like we have some things that we'll send out as follow-up. So great.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. And I want to say, you're all good parents already. Everyone's doing a great job, and you've devoted an hour of your evening to learn more about this. So.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for helping us along the journey.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Okay, good night, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Good night. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, guys.